Next up on the winners bracket, we've got good old open palms. This is the classic map. We've got a Chief Jaguar on the bottom right going versus Morax in the top left. 1500 versus 1900, so definitely going to be an underdog story, but I would say that Morax is not to be underestimated. He's kind of hit and miss on a lot of his games, but man, when he hits, he does exceptionally well, especially in ladder format. Achieved going for Land Factory, 4 Mass Extractors, immediate push to the Hydro, and a lot of times I see some variants on this. Looks like Morax is doing about the same thing over there. Usually I see people go for a couple of power generators or at least one down here, and potentially even multiple land factories, because this is quite a long walk up to the Hydro, and you do lose out on some potential build time. The difference is slight, but given 2 people of equal skill, even tiny differences make a huge difference overall. Achieved is going to finish off the Hydro, drop an additional power generator, and go for another land factory as opposed to an air factory. It would appear that Morax is also going for the 100% land strategy. He's got 4 land factories queued around the Hydro with no additional power generators. I think that these guys might have arranged a meme game at the beginning. Comms up, no point defense. Air would be try hard. Okay, so, oh my goodness. Apparently this is Snoops only, no air. This is Snoops and engineers, no air, no commander upgrades. Oh my goodness, this is gonna be amazing. It's a Snoop game. It's a Snoop game. No wonder he's not building any extra power. Good lord. All right, so Snoop's on the map, going after an engineer. We are observing a Snoop almost killing an engineer with the help of a couple of his buddies. Well, at least we get our little bit of entertainment for the day, right? Right. We've already got like 10 Snoops on the map up here. I'm curious as to how the eco plays out on this. Oh, stalled for 52. Good lord, Morax, get your act together. Come on, I know you're better than this. He's reclaiming tree clumps over here to make up his power gap. And that is helping him to a certain degree, but then he's using all his power up again to build another land factory. So not actually that much assistance. Awesome, awesome. You better get some more on. But minus 12 is not a bad place to be. Achieved is at plus 24 and minus 18 mass. Trying to get additional factories online. So it's basically just going to be who can get the most build power up versus commander placement, because I don't even want to think about how many Snoops it takes to kill an ACU. Over on the left-hand side, we've got about 6 Snoops versus about 3 Snoops. Of course, the mass extractors are there to meet shield, which is only a thing in Snoop versus Snoop games. But I do think that Morax has a pretty heavy upper hand in early game production. Chief Jaguar, as it goes on though, has scaled a bit harder and a bit better without that power stall. So we've got 6 total land factories already online, with number 7 and number 8 coming up. And on the other side, Morax has got a paltry 5 with number 6 on the way. That is going to give Achieved Jaguar increasing unit counts as the game goes on. How OP would walls be with this? Oh, let's not even think about that. Wall sections, the Snoops would never be able to get through them. You'd have to send engineers up to reclaim the wall sections. Just walls everywhere, and it'll be fine. So many Snoops. You know what the advantage here is? Who needs radar when you have literally only Snoops? You could just go Snoops. They make their own intel, and they also tell you everything that's going on everywhere. So as long as you have plenty of Snoops in the area, you know exactly what's going on. Also, Shift G I think would be invaluable in this, because you can clump all of your Snoops up into one tiny little pack of DPS, whereas your opponent is going to be scattered everywhere. Snoops have no AoE. So you might be able to overcome superior numbers with superior clumping. I'm not going to swear by that, but it seems like it would make sense. Hydro coming up for Morax on this edge. It looks like Achieved does have more Snoops, but Morax is slightly better off for land control. Although I don't think that really makes that much of a difference because it is almost exactly 50-50 split. Yet more factories coming online. Interesting point of fact. The factories actually burn more mass per tick. Oh no, they don't. It's -3. I thought it was -5. That is air scouts. That is air scouts that I'm thinking of. All right, so -3 per tick, which means you actually do need more factories to burn all your mass when you're only building Snoops. Morax waiting in, his regen almost keeping him at full health as he picks off the Snoops one by one. You'll notice that he already has 15 kills, but he has barely scratched the surface of his first veterancy. So you probably don't want to depend on veterancy to save you in these kinds of situations, seeing as it's going to take you a while to work your way up through the vets. Morax is going to front build some factories. He's also getting even more land factories up on the right. Let's take a Snoop count. We've got Morax with 141 and a Chief Jaguar with 114. So Morax is actually substantially ahead on his Snoop numbers. Can they build point defense? I think point defense were probably outlawed in the gentleman's agreement because point defense would be stupidly overpowered. Oh my goodness, Morax actually built a radar. What fresh madness is this? When was the last time you saw an entire base being overrun by Snoops? They killed off all the mass extractors. They killed off all the units. We've actually got raiding happening over here with, I think, what deserves to be called cruel and unusual punishment happening at the slow death of these mass extractors. Good lord. Morax streaming his scouts in is going to suffer some losses, but now Chief Jaguar is bringing more land factories online to be able to push out more of these scouts. The scout warfare is too dang much. ACU going for the outside expansion to claim that. The same as Morax claimed this one. And now it looks like Achieved is starting to be favored in the number of scouts. Although this horde is pouring down towards his ACU, I don't think Achieved Jaguar is particularly worried because that 2 DPS per is not a very scary thing to deal with. Yes, 2 DPS with 2 rate of fire. So that's going to be 4 damage per shot once every 2 seconds, I think. Yes? Yes. Alright. Somebody needs to do the math on how many Snoops it takes to kill an ACU. Let's go get our count again. Morax is running a grand total of 264 Snoops. Achieved Jaguar at 275. So virtually neck and neck on their Snoop counts. But I think Achieved Jaguar is going to come out far ahead on this one. He is absolutely laying waste to the enemy Snoops incoming using that Shift G command. Can you imagine an overcharge in that clump? You'd kill 50 units at once. Although now Morax is shifting over to the left-hand side. Let's go ahead and take a count again. That is going to be 267 versus 258. Morax slightly in the lead there. Achieved Jaguar's ACU is coming up to the front. Gun upgrade, this is one of the few times the gun upgrade really wouldn't make much of a difference because all it would give you is the range. You'd actually be wasting more damage per tick than you were before. Let me check and see. I'm going to F11 here. I can't F11 in a replay, apparently. Crap, I wanted to see what my sim speed was. We're down to +3 at 9 minutes into the game due to massive Snoop fire. Looks like Morax is getting himself surrounded here. Achieved Jaguar definitely does have the superior number of units, at least on this front. Both players focusing on killing off scouts with their ACUs to reduce the total damage potential of the other player as opposed to targeting the ACU directly. Achieve Jaguar still putting down more land factories. Morax in a power stall. Achieve Jaguar currently very well balanced. Achieve starting to flag slightly on his number of snoops as the bodies litter the battlefield. But you'll see there isn't any reclaim available because every one of those wrecks is worth less than 10 mass. It is kind of ridiculous. Morax has started hitting the ACU directly with the commander now. Jaguar bringing in his massive clump of scouts directly in front of Morax's ACU. He's going to tangle the pathfinding and attempt to get away. Morax moving all of his land scouts over to the left-hand side, leaving his ACU surrounded in a sea of blue, from which he might have a little trouble escaping. Oh my goodness, his ACU is actually starting to take a massive amount of damage now. Achieve Jaguar has chosen to focus fire on the commander. It is all in now. Do not zoom in, he shouts, because it is threatening a game crash due to all of the projectiles flying around. The ACU is now separating Morax at 4,100 HP, finally getting a veterancy as has achieved. Down to 3,000 HP, 2 damage at a time, 4 damage at a time rather. Those projectiles slowly but surely shredding the HP on that commander. 2,300 health on the dial. He falls below it thanks to Achieve Jaguar pounding away at the ACU directly with his commander. The sea of scouts continues to fall against Morax's ACU as he gets below 2,000 HP, approaching the 1,000 mark. I think that is gonna be game. 400 HP and oh, he got out. 60 HP on the commander and he is away. That was so close. But Achieve Jaguar now has a large numerical advantage in snoops, and I don't think there's anything this ACU can do but run. Morax is gonna have to figure out how on earth to stop the blue tidal wave cascading across the map as his ACU struggles to vet up again. He's gonna block his own pathfinding with a scout. Not exactly what you want to see. 156 kills on that commander. A hero indeed, as he continues to regen, holding steady at about 540 currently. He's actually gaining HP against the damage of these units due to the 16 regen on his commander. There's a little bit stripped away back to 540. We're talking about the triple digit exploits now. And he's not below 500 yet. He's gonna make it behind the factories. The meat shield will be real as Achieve Jaguar close in. I think the Jaguar will have a little bit of difficulty killing off all of these factories and making it ahead, because as he's damaging the factories, the enemy snoops will be killing off his own units. Morax dipping a toe back into the fight. That might be a mistake, although if he had overcharge, that would be a glorious opportunity right there. Once again, he is at 3/4 veterancy. If he can get another uptick, he will be much more survivable. 220 kills on the ACU now. About 60 ahead of his opponent. The land factories are being reclaimed by Achieve Jaguar because he has decided that the damage is too slow. 37 factories online for Achieved versus 29 for Morax. Morax is finally running eco balance now. Well, at least power balanced. Jaguar also doing the same, but he is reclaiming around the back end. Jaguar doing his best to eliminate the build power of his opponent in order to gain that upper hand to an even greater degree. Morax building additional factories in the rear, but only on one engineer. I think that we can successfully conclude that the winner of this matchup is going to be a Chief Jaguar, strictly due to the massive number of units at his disposal. 831. He has almost reached unit cap on his Snoops versus 205 for poor, pitiful Morax. Morax is about to gain another veterancy though. In before, there it is. 4,000 HP as my computer starts to grind to a halt. Holy cow. Slow down. Catch up. Okay. And moving. Okay, be careful, Brink. You don't want this game to crash. We're gonna slowly zoom in, one tick at a time, on the ACU that's now at 2,000 HP and falling quickly. I don't know what it is about the Snoop particle effects, but they are absolutely murdering my frame rate right now. This is absolutely insane. I approve of this game method. And kaboom goes Morax. I forgot overcharge, he calls out at the very end of it. Oh, good Lord Almighty. That is a game and a half right there. Well played. Well played from both of these guys. I love to see something silly in here. And you know, it is a tournament. They both played UEF. They just agreed to level the playing field by excluding some units, so I can't really fault them for anything. All hail the winner of the Snoop fights, Achieved Jaguar. Morax is going to drop down into the losers bracket. Snoop Wars greater than Lab Wars being thrown around in chat. Our next round in the losers bracket is going to be between Heaven and Pachi, otherwise known as Turin, who has a strange obsession with repetitiveness in his naming conventions. Heaven is on the top right, going Land Factory first with a couple of P-Gens and then some Mass Extractors. On the southern edge, we have got a Land Factory first, followed by second Land Factory after 5 power generators, and a Mass Extractor in the mix there. So nobody's going air too terribly early. This map looks like a strange desert-fied version of the bridge. I don't know. You've got a central channel, and then you've got 2 outlying edges with plateaus on each side. The center canyon appears to not have any pathable ways to get up to the top, but there are onboarding points, looks like here, yeah. So here you can get on and here you can get on, and then also here, here, and these 2. So very interesting layout on the mesas. Definitely something that you're gonna have to watch because there's a variety of different ways that units can get up on these, and then also this essentially dumps into your base. Any units caught in the middle, although there is some reclaim in here, so you need to rush that at the beginning to get some of that. Any units caught in the middle here can be bombarded by artillery fire from both sides. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. I have personally never done anything on this map, so we're just going to have to kind of learn as we go and hopefully assume that between an 1800 and a 1900 player, they might know what they're doing and might give us a good build order. I'm going to go ahead and shut down the betting. So there we go. We got a 9 for Heaven and 4 for Pachi. We'll see who comes out ahead in this one. Pachi's already got his 2 land factories producing. Looks like we got some engineers and some tanks coming off. More engineers than I thought there would be at the beginning of a game like this, and he is already pausing. There is a hydro out to the edge for both players, so that is a nice thing to see. As a couple of Mech Marines fall before the might of the Striker. Although one appears to be getting away with 3 HP. One slight little gust of wind, a single shot from a Snoop would be able to kill that. All right, there's the tank firing away. Got the other scout, and another tank will be able to save this engineer alive. Well done there. All right, Heaven is rocking 11 income right now versus 9 for Pachi due to having 1 extra mass extractor right there. Looks like these guys are going to be just poking at each other a little bit at the earliest stage while they're trying to get their build power online. One of the strangest things about maps like this, and it kind of applies to Theta Passage as well to a certain degree, when you don't have many mass extractors in your starting location and you have to get out into the map and get them all, and then you don't have that many at the end of it, you end up struggling to eke out every possible advantage you can with each individual mass tick. Both players are running 11 eco, both players are going to end up with about the same amount of reclaim, and the difference between victory and defeat can be having 1 too many or 1 too few land factories. So watching games like this is kind of an exercise in patience, and when I play a map like Firelight that we've got here, I end up infuriated and not knowing what to do because I always build too much build power. Heaven is currently stalling for 13 mass per tick. He does have 1 more bit of reclaim to get, and he's down to -2 right now as he's kind of moving around to gather things and try to get his hydro online. And then he also has 4 land factories going on 6 in the back of his base. If we switch over to Pachi, Pachi has got 3 in the main base, and he's got 2 coming up on the outside edge. So 1 less planned for the future, but I think he'll be doing fine for production up for quite a while because he does have the same amount total as Heaven, at least in this portion of the game, and about the same amount of units as well. Let's take a look. 13 and 4 for tanks and scouts, and then we've got 12, 1 arty, and 4. So literally exactly the same number of units. The only difference between these two guys is the placement of the land factory and the fact that Heaven has built 1 Lobo as opposed to 1 extra tank. It is somewhat ridiculous. Got this other land factory coming online for number 6. Kind of curious as to what Pachi would have planned with the extra mass. Nope, he has queued an air factory. So that is going to give him the same total number of factories, but one of them is going to give him an advantage that Heaven does not possess. Even if you don't end up building stationary T1 anti-air, if you have to mix in, if you have to mix in mobile anti-air with your army, you're going to end up with fewer tanks by default. I mean, that's just the fact of it. So that'll weaken your enemy's forces in other ways, in addition to also getting in the damage from that bomber, which is a good thing indeed. Pachi is rocking 21 income right now versus Heaven's 15, mostly due to having his mass extractors built more early on the sides and then claiming these 2. But once Heaven eliminates these, it will be a much, much more even game. Now it's only 21 to 17. If he kills that one and builds it, then it will be even all the way around. Tanks coming in at the advantage for Pachi. The radar has been lost for Heaven in the center, and he's also going to lose this mass extractor. But tanks coming up the hill will be able to stop the assault. Although, look at this maneuvering. Pachi playing Heaven like a fiddle. He forced all the units over to this edge to stop the run-by, and then use that opportunity to push his tanks in and get 2 additional mass extractor kills on the right side expansion. Heaven is going to be in a bit of trouble here if he's not able to lock this son of a gun down, because right now he is losing out on eco big time as opposed to Pachi. I mean, it's only like a 6 mass difference currently, but that is a big deal when you're on 20 mass incomes. Heaven now moving back to the center of the channel and hopefully getting all of his units in where he can guard every access point to his base, because the worst thing that could happen right now is losing any power generators or build power on this edge. He's decided to spend the mass for an energy storage. I would imagine that that is going to save up the little bit of energy that he is overproducing and then let him go for either a gun upgrade later or potentially give him an overcharge if he feels like he needs to use one in a situation. Okay. Getting into a bit of a standoff here, but that is understandable. Considering that both of these guys are going to be very hesitant about using their units. In comes the bomber. That is going to hit 2 to 3 tanks as the napalm continues to burn on the ground. And then that bomber will cycle back around. I don't think that he had a clean hit. Nope, on the second one he had to circle again. He's going to come in on the densest packed group of units, taking 2 artillery with him as he goes by. So basically T1 anti-air is going to have to be built in the back end, and until that gets up to the front line, this bomber is going to have free reign over the forces on the right. Over on the left, Heaven and Pachi separated by a cliff face, but Pachi overall is going to pull ahead in total unit count. And now he's going to be in a situation to really mess Heaven up. 2 bombers in the air. Those are going to be able to harass all these tanks to their as much as they desire. 2 mobile anti-airs moving up from the back. Games like this are intriguing to watch. There's usually not a whole lot going on that's visible, but what you're seeing is tiny little adjustments here and there that are making all the difference in the world, and Heaven there overextended. He accidentally ran into the clump of units with the oncoming ACU, and that is going to be GG. There's enough tanks there to kill that ACU, no problem. The Hydro's going down. Pachi is going to win it. Well played, Heaven. You did have a good early build. You got the right number of factories up. You got your units out. But Tourney just absolutely shreked you on the finer points. And finer points there are many of in a game like this. So I hope everybody learned a little something from that. The build order for this was land factory, 1 power generator, 1 mass extractor, then a couple additional power generators and mass extractors. It's difficult. Maps like this are very difficult to get right because every single mass must be used to the maximum possible level of efficiency. Difficult, difficult map to play. Don't play like Heaven. Our next stop on the losers bracket is going to be Canis River. This is another rather old map that's been played quite a bit. And the difference with this one is you have approximately all the mass at your disposal. Over to the right, you've got a 38 and a 75 boulder, along with all these others that are worth about 5 each. You've got wrecks, you've got more rocks through the center, you've got plenty of reclaim to boost your game up, in addition to having 6 mass extractors at the core. So this is going to lend itself towards massive amounts of land spam, and somewhere in here you got to thread in that hydro so that you are able to support the amount of factories that you need to build. Both of these players, we've got even the Crack King on the north side and Koiskix on the south. I think that the rankings over here are global and slightly deceptive, judging by the chat that we just saw here. Your 1800 ladder right says even. Okay, so this is going to be a relatively even matchup, I feel like. Even going for 3 power generators in the mix of a couple of T1 mass extractors. And then it looks like engineers are going to build the others here, and Even's ACU is going where? It looks like they're too busy typing to actually do the things. We'll come back to him in just a second. Koiskix dropping another mech, and he's going to put down his 2nd land factory right here. And also a radar on the hydro for adjacency, so that doesn't cost quite as much to run. So theoretically speaking, you only need the hydro in order to get your 2nd land factory down. But since you do have additional reclaim, you're going to be building far more land factories than that. You do want to have more power generators in your build so that you can afford to slam down some of the necessities without power stalling too heavily. On the right, we've got a mech marine that comes face to face with a striker and a snoop, so excellent dodge there for Even. That is going to allow him to push further south with those units and potentially pick up an engineer on this side. I do like the early raise, but unfortunately sometimes they just don't work because there's a tank in the way, and unless you have really good micro, the tank is pretty much going to smack around that lab without too much of an issue. Evan is going for an air factory. Bit odd on this one. I typically see a lot of land with air being pushed back quite a ways in some cases, but Even is going to go for third air factory. He's got 4 more land factories queued on the front line, none of them adjacent to his mass extractor for some reason or other. And then we've got the slow and steady spreading of units all through the map here. I had another word for that, and then I mentally blanked on it as it was coming out of my mouth. Evan is going to drop a radar right on the front line, which is a very smart thing to do because on this map, it is small enough. You can pretty much cover the entire map, or at least the most important parts of it, with a single radar. Also, since it's a symmetrical UEF matchup, as is every single one of these, you don't have to worry about hover units crossing the water and killing your radar, which does kind of lend itself towards a better experience overall. That's going to get access all the way from this choke point to this choke point and allow for the easy anticipation of enemy troop movements. That was a deleted land factory right there. Oh, dearie, dearie me. Koiskix has decided to come in hot on the other side of the river. He's going to go after the build power here and try to eliminate everything he can. It's actually a good play to, if you can, get the hydro on this side. You just don't want to get overextended enough that your ACU becomes endangered. Over on the left, T1 Bomber going to work on some of these expansioneers to the left-hand side. I think that's going to be a loop and going after that one right there. No air units planned as of yet for Koiskix. He is going to go all in on the land match, and so far, that does seem to be working for him. Even the Crack King is moving over towards the ACU. He doesn't have enough units backing himself up to actually negate this commander, and he has lost a pretty significant amount of build power there. He's going to try to build some more in the back of his base, but I think overall, this is going to lend itself to a pretty hard situation to get out of. That is going to set him back quite drastically indeed. This bomber is doing some good work, don't get me wrong, but I'm thinking that the additional land factory would have done better. Now we're going to see Koiskix entering the air. That's going to get a scout out first, followed by some inties, and that will let him deal with that bomber without too much trouble. Although, the bomber does appear to have been gotten rid of already. A single T1 mobile anti-air was all that was required, and that is all she wrote in the tale of the bomber. On the north side, Koiskix also moving in on the new build power here, able to eliminate the engineers, shut down that factory production, and we've got T1 bombers now hammering away at the units in the base. This could be detrimental overall though, because if these do miss, they're actually able to damage friendly units, but that does not appear to be the case right there at the least. Evan is going to move up, try to get a little bit of reclaim on this side, but of course he's going to come face to face with the enemy ACU. Koiskix was able to get some extra units over to his side of the river, but those are going to get shredded to a certain degree by the T1 bombers that are coming in. Something to note about the UEF bombers, I don't remember which patch it was in, but they actually lowered the DPS, or lowered the damage per cycle of the bombs while increasing the napalm time. So if you're laying in bombing runs on units, you want to go in the direction that the units are walking so that the napalm is in straight lines where the units spend more time inside it. If you dodge to the side and get out of the napalm, you can lose about 25% of the health on the T1 unit, and the T1 unit won't die. However, if you stay in the napalm for the entire duration, it does the same amount of damage that it did before. So UEF bombers didn't change in effectiveness on stationary targets and buildings, but they did get somewhat of a nerf on moving targets in exchange for that epic area of effect. Let's go check on over here. This is going to be a relatively difficult run by to stop. We've only got 3 tanks and 3 not together. You know how I feel about units that are clumped together, but we are seeing a good response from the 4 tanks on this side, coupled with the units moving out of the factory. They will probably be able to stop this. The question is, can he get the reclaim and cycle that into a bitter situation for himself? I am not entirely sure. He didn't lose anything super important there, just a handful of tanks, but he is going to reclaim. Oh no, he did lose an energy storage right there. Why would you build your energy storage on the front line? I do not understand. Excellent T1 bombing run there, making good use of the napalm to damage several T1 power generators at the same time. This is probably not intentional, but the engineer healing that PGen is not necessarily a bad idea. Because if you can heal the power generators up that are around the ones getting damaged, you're less likely to lose chunks of your power grid due to adjacent damage. That air control is complete though. The bomber is going to get off another pass. Oh dear lord. That was what? 6, 8 engineers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, plus almost another mass extractor. T1 anti-air is going to deny bomber access to the base, but now there's more bombers moving in on Evan's ACU directly with those other tanks that are available. Koiskix is now going to just go on a rampage against the enemy base. He has just complete map control. He's only missing 1 mass extractor right over here. Evan is going to be holed up in his base, nowhere to go, and there's enough tanks on the field right now to be able to kill that ACU straight up. It's going to be a little bit of a task getting past this point defense. You got to take a moment to consider and place your arty shots correctly, but all in all, I think that Koiskix has got this game in the bag, barring some kind of stupidity like we've seen in other games in tournaments before. Maybe, just maybe, he can walk into some point defense and do Evan a favor, but I think the likelihood of that is quite low indeed. Alright, the base returns to peace very briefly before the tanks move in again to eliminate the mass extractor on that side. Evan, of course, gonna have to move his tanks over to intercept on the other edge. That might actually be Koiskix so secure in his map control that he's actually building his enemy's hydro to get the power that he needs to get more stuff in here. Evan had a T2 mass extractor on that side that he's talking about. That was this one right here, and I think that goes a long ways towards explaining the problems that he's having. Although, I'm going to rescind that statement. He probably got the T2 mass extractor because he was borderline overflowing mass, because Koiskix continually killed off all of his build power. If you get a T2 mass extractor on this map early in the game, it is usually a mistake, because that T2 mass extractor for you is going to be a superior number of T1 tanks for your opponent. So you need to be really, really careful about that. But I think in this particular case, it was probably reactionary on Evan's part. The ultimate troll would be killing him with T2 static arty. Nah. At this point, you just need to end the game as quickly as possible. And there goes the commander, meeting his nuclear oblivion with what pride he has left. Good game, Koiskix. And that is how a good build triumphs in these kinds of situations. That air factory early on, I think, was probably the demise of Evan, because he was only able to get out a couple of bombers. They weren't terribly useful, and that was one less land factory that was producing tanks. But well played from both of these guys. Koiskix moving on through the losers bracket, and Evan knocked from the tourney in this round. Time for another round on Firelight. This time on the right hand side we've got Koiskix, and on the left we have Morax. We're currently working our way up through the losers bracket so that we can get to the semifinals. So a lot of these names are going to seem a little bit familiar. In the last game, we saw that Koiskix had an exceptionally good build for a small map. He had more mass extractors to deal with, but in this particular case, we can probably expect him to do about the same. I would love to see some alternate builds from these guys so we can see what's going on with the rest of the folks trying this map. Morax is going for a bit of an odd power build, but he is re-queuing, so that's good. He's going for 3 land factories right off the bat. There's a 243 reclaim mass right here, which is probably going to help boost him up on that, along with another 45 rec on the outside with the mass to reclaim through the center. I just realized that there's actually clouds on this map, interestingly enough. So on the north, we've got a much more conservative power build with 2 land factories coming into play. And I'm not really sure how he's intending to run 2 land factories on 3 power generators, but I am all for the experience of watching it. You have no trees to reclaim, man. What is your plan here? So he's gonna go down to -14. He might not actually stall. Oh my goodness. This is going to be the most heavily optimized build ever. Look at this eco balance as we get a raid in from Morax to disrupt the peace. Okay, so that's going to knock out an expansion here right over there. You'll notice Morax pulling it out to the maximum range in order to not let it get reclaimed. And then the tank is going to move in and, despite some twitchy driving from Morax, eliminate that mech marine. So another engineer is going to have to be dispatched out to the other mass extractor, knocking Koiskix back ever so slightly on his economic adventures. But currently we're looking at 24 power positive, zeroed out mass. And that is a beautiful, beautiful piece of balance. I would have definitely built more power than that. I would have never thought that you could actually get balance on this with that little amount of power. But I think it's because the ACU is not building, it is walking. The ACU is usually one of the biggest expenditures in the early game because it's worth 2 engineers worth of build power. So if the ACU is building, he would be right back in the hole, like -50 power with these land factories running. But since he's only building with 1 engineer on the outside edge, it's actually working out quite well for him. Scout has been able to pick up this extra tank moving over to the other edge. The engineer is going to come under fire, but thankfully the Hydro is going to block just enough that ace engineer will survive on 6 HP. The other engineer will not be so lucky, but he did get the mass extractor built on that edge, so Koiskix will be able to take advantage of his full economic potential in the core base. Koiskix is doing a much better job of getting out and securing the map. You'll notice that he is a couple mass extractors ahead on his output. He's at 13 to 11 mass per tick, and he's about to come online with yet another on his commander. He's also gotten out and gotten more reclaim than Morax has. So I think what we're watching is Morax probably did not have a set build for this map. He may be winging it. He's overflowing by 142 power and stalling at 1 mass, while Koiskix is floating nicely in the middle of his bar. He's got 5 and 55 plus, and he's ready to throw down whatever he wants to. A little bit of reclaim is going to put him up a little high in the storage for a lot of people's likings, but look at that balance once he's actually building. +8, -1. So all of the extra power that Morax has put in, or the extra mass that Morax has put into power, Koiskix is transformed into T1 tanks and factories to push out more of said T1 tanks. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing to watch. Koiskix also pushing forward and taking all the mass extractors on this plateau, or at least he's hoping to, as his opponent is pushing up to probably deny that thing. Engineers passing each other, building opposing mass extractors. Looks like Koiskix is going to get the upper hand. They had the exact same thing queued. Point defense and all. That is kind of hilarious up there on the ridge. This engineer is going to be able to capture this mass extractor, turning it back into his control, and point defense is not going to come on fast enough to deny the tanks moving up through that mesa. But I don't think that's too much of a concern. Koiskix is still running +4 mass and has the factories now at his disposal to completely and totally outproduce what Morax can throw towards his end of the map. Morax is currently sitting at -5, -7 to +34, so much better balance moving forward here. Once he gets a little bit more build power online, he might be okay, although it looks like his negatory in mass is due to building a factory with his ACU as well. On the northern edge, Koiskix zeroed out on mass to -4 with +38 on the power dial. So he is still going to continue building T1 land factories. He is still only on his hydro and 3 T1 powers. He has started to build a couple more power generators in the back, but it is extremely conservative.
Commander,
I love seeing matchups like this where you see a professional come in and have a build order that blows everybody else away. On the tank front, we've got 23 tanks, 1 Lobo for Koiskix, and then on Morax, we have got 15 tanks and 2 artillery. So Koiskix showing those superior numbers with this build. When you're setting up your builds, you do want to have 2 engineers building land factories, 1 engineer building power. And that will give you roughly an equivalent exchange where as your power generators are coming online, your land factories are starting production. You'll notice that the land factories burn 19 power and T1 power generators produce 20. So over time, you will come out ever so slightly ahead, but not by much at all. Looks like Koiskix holds the superior unit numbers in basically every single quadrant on the map. This is not going to be easily obtainable because Morax did put a point defense in there, but we do have some T1 artillery mixed in through Koiskix forces. So I don't know. I don't think this is going to fall very, very soon, but it is going to eventually be defeated if there's no tanks down there from Morax. Nice little unit play there. Morax was able to attack one section of the forces instead of the entire thing and make a little bit of headway there. He's also got a T1 bomber out from an air factory on the hydro. As soon as that bomber was overhead, Koiskix started building his own air factory. He may have actually been building that before, I'm not entirely sure. But either way, both of the players are now going to be in air, and hopefully Koiskix has enough power for this, because he is just now finishing his 8th power generator, and he's got all of these land factories running. But look at that mass stall and the power balance that comes with it. He's got to get a little reclaim, but even when he does, he is absolutely fine. I would have never thought that you could actually play a legitimate game with that few power generators. That is absolutely absurd. These land factories only burn 16 power each due to the adjacency with the hydro, which is a lovely, lovely thing to see. That is basically 4 land factories burning the same amount of power as 3 would. The air factory also does get a pretty significant adjacency bonus from that, so Morax is doing it the right way there as well. Okay, so Koiskix at 20 freaking 5 mass income to Morax's 15. He has got 38 tanks, 9 Lobos versus Morax's 28 tanks and 8 Lobos. Once again, ahead in every single regard except bombers. And he does have an interceptor out now to counter those. He'll be able to pick off both bombers before the anti is shot down. That's going to leave Koiskix over here at slightly lower HP than Morax, but he is going to try to eliminate that extra build power. Just don't get your ACU trapped on the outside edge. That's all I ask, because it would be very easy to die in this kind of situation. Looks like Morax might be making the play. He's abandoning his other edge in order to try and swarm the ACU for a kill. This is going to get a little dicey for Koiskix because he's only got 7,500 HP versus 89 on Morax. I think Morax may be going for a potential draw here. Koiskix getting as far away from Morax's ACU as possible as he tries to damage the tanks on this edge. He now sees what's happening and he's bringing in every single unit at his disposal. ACU coming in contact with the tanks there, slowing the steps just a little bit, getting trapped as the ACU struggles to come closer. Units now moving in on Morax's base. He has lost his production. His only hope is to tie. Koiskix at 4,400 HP versus 64. Morax now starting to take a bit more damage as time goes on. Koiskix is going to have to use his units to their best effect to block the pathfinding of Morax's ACU in order to get this commander away safely. Morax at 38, Koiskix at 42. You gotta get it to 2,500 or lower in order to mutual KO, but Koiskix looks like he's doing a pretty good job of getting out of the way. Both of the ACUs tangled up in pathfinding problems though. Morax now, I think, too low to be able to bring this back. And that is game. 800, 300, 200. Boom! Dropping down to 3,000 HP. But Koiskix comes out victorious in that matchup. Well freaking played, guys. That was a good match. And this, I think, is the build that you want to be going for on this map. 3 power generators, 2 land factories, you push out, get the hydro, and then you can run a total of 8 land factories as long as you're getting reclaim. That is absolutely mind-blowing. And that is the advantage that somebody has who's got the 1,800 rank in ladder, has put in the time to sandbox and to develop these build orders and then pull them out and curb stomp other people with them. I really thought Koiskix was going to get trapped there. I agree, Plasma. But that was some good maneuvering on his part, and he was able to bring in enough units to be able to put a stop to that. I think Morax may have been able to draw with a little bit more careful control of the units, but as things stand, I mean, well freaking played. No shame there for Koiskix or Morax, but Koiskix carrying that one away hard. That is gonna wrap everything up for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, feel free to drop a like and share it with someone. If you want to support the channel, catch the streams, or join the Discord, check out the links in the description. Thank you all for being at least partially insane, and I will see you in the next one.